Welcome to the Practical AI Adoption Podcast. I'm your host, Asa Cox, founder and CEO of Arcanum AI here in beautiful Wellington, New Zealand. In this podcast, we focus on the practical applications of AI in the workforce. We explore real world examples, we interview business owners, and we discuss how AI is reshaping industries, boosting productivity, and creating new opportunities. But we also discuss the challenges to organizations and to humans on how to embrace and adopt AI in a business context. So, whether you're a business leader, an employee, or just a tech enthusiast, tune in to discover actionable insights, implementation challenges, and future trends in AI adoption. Please do share and subscribe so you and others can stay ahead in this AI revolution. Thanks and enjoy the episode. Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to have Erik with me. Erik, how are you doing?
Yeah, doing really good. Really glad to be on. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem at all. We've known each other for a while. We've interacted a fair bit. It's been great to see you in the ecosystem. Thanks for the work that you've done. But for those that don't know you, please give us a bit of a background. How do you introduce yourself at dinner parties? What do you say you do? Just kind of give us an intro.
Yeah, cool. So Erik Zydervelt, co-founder and CEO of Mevo, which is New Zealand's favorite car share. And effectively, the easiest way to describe it is kind of like the scooters you can grab on your phone, but for cars. A little bit harder to leave a car in a tree. That being said, a little bit more formal as well. You can pick up a car in one spot, drive it out to the airport as an example, and drop it off. Take it for 5 minutes, 5 hours, 5 days, whatever works. And I always like to tell people we're on a mission to help build more beautiful and livable cities by providing a better alternative to private car ownership. So that's a little quick bit.
Cool, and it's an epic service. I love it. It's always really exciting to see Mevo around Wellington, where we are. So what's been the journey to where you're at? Kind of give a quick potted history.
Yeah, well, let's see. Way back when, we started by looking at how we can make the biggest positive change in the world. We went, well, biggest positive change has to be where people are, so that narrows you down to cities. And then you go, what are cities actually when you stop to think about it? And effectively, you've got big buildings. That's a lot of impact, but they turn over very slowly, right? And then you've got your transport infrastructure on top of that, right? Which tends to turn over about once every 20 years for the rolling stock, the cars. Huge impact. That's like 64% of the emissions for a lot of cities, give or take, is in that rolling stock. And so I went, cool. Someone will fix that. And then they didn't. We went, okay, that someone's us. I like to joke, we started with 3 founders, 3 laptops, 3 cars, and less than 3 customers, which of course isn't entirely true. We had a couple thousand people on a wait list before we launched. But just started working out, solving the problems, figuring out what we actually needed to do to make this be better than private car ownership. And for now, tens of thousands of people taking hundreds of thousands of trips every year, that is the case. They're using our service with cars in multiple cities, pick up, drop off, wherever. Never worry about all the hassle of car ownership, but get all the upside, right? And only pay for what you use, which is crazy when you think about the average car sits unused 94% of the time, 95 in that range. So, second largest purchase after the house.
Yeah. But I imagine, given how simple you've made it for people like me, there's a lot of complexity behind the scenes to make it that simple.
Right? Because Einstein, right?
Obviously, it's a little bit different to Uber, right? Where you've got owner drivers that you're kind of getting a ride from. These are assets maintained somewhere.
Correct.
So, tell us about the kind of what does the back office look like? What does the operations look like?
Well, carrying on from that 3-car start, and that was back in Wellington in 2016, right at the end, we just kept solving those problems, including the maintenance of the cars, the parking policy, all of that. And largely, I don't know if anyone's familiar with the cold start problem, which is a great book by Andrew Chen. We just had to overcome that building up to a network effect where the value of the network is greater than the sum of the parts, right? So we have operations teams in each of the cities we run in. Then we have a centralized customer support team and product team, and obviously finance and all the normal stuff. Really, the key here is one, getting to scale and perfectly aligned with this podcast. Two, automating. Like, there's so much. When you think about a car, they haven't really evolved or been, there's no like massive stage jumps of innovation in the last 100 years. The biggest one has been the current shift to electric. Yeah. That's a huge change. But in terms of innovating outside of the drivetrain, there's not a big change even yet. So, you mentioned Uber as a great example. They bought a black car company when they first got started. So they owned their assets.
I remember using it in New York way back when. It was cool.
Yeah,
very cool.
Yeah, so they did actually own all their assets to overcome that same cold start problem. And we're getting ready at the moment to make that a similar shift to basically having the assets off of our books and, owned by our members and shifting to a two-sided marketplace. But it is in that, one, overcoming the cold start problem, and two, just automating, everything from, if you get a parking ticket, having that automated, through to making sure people don't stop in the wrong places.
Yeah, talk us through the processes in the business, because again, that's how people, I think, listen to this podcast kind of think, is what are the core processes, what are the things that could be automated, and how have you thought through that? Because if one of the critical things to the success is automation, then you've probably done a bit more thinking about it than most. So talk us through kind of the automation thinking.
I personally like to think about it from a couple of different angles. So from the user experience side of things, right, there's just finding out it happens. So there's all the marketing automation and onboarding and stuff. And there's the education piece. Like, okay, this is a completely different way to engage with private cars. So there's the standard kind of email flows and FAQs. And, we're starting to look at AI chatbots in that process as well, which is bringing some good automation, as well as AI-based customer support. That's coming through in a really nice way. Then there's the on-trip, weird. There's so many weird outliers when you're dealing with the real world, like humans and the real world, not just software as a service in the internet, right? Simple, relatively simple work streams. So you got to have that really strong kind of safety net for people. And that's actually where trust is a really important concept. And I think blending automation and human support as a backup that is actually like really bloody good is where you can start to build that trust layer. And that's actually worth its weight in gold, right? Because then you can automate as much as you want, but you still aren't going to like lose people in the process. And then the finish, then on trip. So the cars need to unlock 99.9% of the time reliably. Cars need to work. They need to be able to end their trip, have it all function the whole way through. Billing, all the financial processes need to work. General membership processes, right? Engaging with that and activating members as champions. So like a strong network-based referral program, that's all automated. Mm-hmm. And then on the operations side, how long since the car's been cleaned? Is it parked in the right place? Is it running out of fuel? Does it need when is its next repair? Who actually owns the car? Are they being rewarded appropriately? All these sorts of things. Very automatable.
Right. But
working through that process, again, you've got all those messy realities of the real world and humans.
So how because for many businesses, there are lots of things that could be automated, right? And not everyone's a technology company fundamentally like you guys are. So they're going to have to prioritize probably more than you guys might have to in the near term, especially. How do you think through which ones to pick to automate? What's the prioritization kind of methodology or thinking around it?
Look, it's been something we've developed over the years, and we continue to, but it's probably not the flashiest or most exciting answer. But we mechanical Turk things, measure how much they cost, and pick the most expensive one. So is it something that's expensive but very rarely happening? That probably has a pretty low multiplier. Is it something that's cheap but happening all the time? Again, probably pretty low multiplier. Is it something that's expensive and happening all the time? Well, we should probably look at automating that. And then just like so many other companies, we've got a product team. We know the cost of running that team. We know how much output we can expect from them. Great, really effective team, great humans in there. And we just go, well, where are we going to make the next investment for business returns? And in doing that, we've seen a lot of peers, often owned by big corporates, who aren't technology first and automation first internationally, and they'll be successful in their operations on the ground, kind of total trips, total number of customers and stuff, but they'll have call centers, as an example, that blow out to 50 or 100 staff at the same time that we'll have 1 to 3 people who are supporting the automation or the AI or the whatever that looks like.
Yeah. And do you therefore see that as a long-term competitive advantage? Again, trying to think about companies considering investing in this type of technology, right? AI and automation, who maybe are one of the incumbents rather than one of the challengers like you guys are.
Yeah.
But do you see technology in the longer term or the short term, being a competitive advantage?
Look, I hate to be a bit cliche on this one, and I will be the first to announce that I am not the first person to say this. But the reality of it is you can either look at kind of baseload off-the-shelf products when it comes to AI, or bespoke machine learning or otherwise. It might be natural language. It might be computational. But all of this stuff, if you're not, it's just going to become the new watermark. That is the level at which you need to be at to keep being able to breathe. Otherwise, you're going to be underwater, and that's you will be outcompeted, right? So, I, as an example, personally, just always have a note taker in all of my meetings. And I'm always surprised at how few other people do. These sorts of things are just going to feather their way into increasing people's productivity.
So that's an example. How much time do you think it saved having that note taker, doing the summarization, taking out the actions, that kind of stuff?
Look, there's certainly some level of it which is time, but actually, I think the value is kind of more than a 1-for-1. So I had a interaction over the last 6 months with a party who, the kind way to put it is their memory of events was quite different from my memory, and certainly that of the recordings that I had thanks to my note taker. I wouldn't have had that level of detail prior.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a logarithmic jump of value creation in the way I see it.
Because it turns into a knowledge base, I guess, right? I mean, it turns it into an asset, which could be used in multiple ways. In your case, for one, but there's a whole bunch of different use cases once you start getting away from recalling or writing notes into something that's a lot denser and a lot richer in information.
I feel like we could be having the same conversation about businesses investing into internet infrastructure in the early 2000s, or businesses considering digitization in the early 90s, early 80s, early 90s, depending on which part of the world you're in. You just can't compare a company, even take a big corporate, as clunky as some of their systems may be, they're digitized and they work through like large scale internet-based marketing funnels, right? And if you think back to pre-digitization, think about that company in the 80s and try to imagine running one of those in anything but monopolistic market, right? And even governments, which are largely monopolies in a lot of ways, right? Obviously they need to be, but even they're digitized, right? And on the internet, and and it's the same thing. And I think it's one of you look, the US recently, by federal order, I think the order was that every government department must have a chief AI officer.
Wow.
Yeah.
So trying to create forcing functions to get on board with the technology.
It's just going to become another one of those major waves.
So how do you think about then the wave in terms of the opportunity, right? So it's going to have impact on the operations of your business, on the industry, on consumer expectations. Like, how do you begin to quantify what that might look like? And how does that impact the way that you make decisions or commitments now?
Well, I mean, we largely from the start had this, build, measure, review, mechanical Turk, automate process from day one. And so whether you're automating with like a digital workflow or you're automating with AI, it's just a different level of valuable output depending on the situation. Some tasks don't need AI. You might use AI at a meta level, like a machine learning level, once you've established enough data to kind of do reviews and assessments of that task. Some do, like natural language. You can't put that through just a normal digitization process, right? Like you do actually need AI right at the coalface of it.
Yeah. And so on the expectation that consumers will get more and more familiar with, and actually the expectations of consumers are going to increase as more consumer software has AI first user experiences and so on. What are the types of AI solutions, tools that you're bringing into the business to kind of help with the growth and also, putting you in a good position for that customer experience?
Well, I mean, this comes back to that previous comment I made about like there's the consumer facing stuff, which is going to be really soft and fluffy and human in lots of ways, right? And then there's the really incredibly technical stuff. A friend of mine is by training organic chemist, and he was telling me that they have one of his friends is working with a company that has these little teeny automated labs, right? And they can run these very complex chemical synthesis experiments, but run through testing and iteration of these chemical synthesis processes and basically achieve like 100 years worth of human lab-based research and development in the space of like 2 or 3 months at just crazy tiny like scales. And so, for us, we've got hundreds of cars in multiple cities interacting with, an array of entities and data sets, whether it's forbidden parking or customers or, business administrators or whatever that looks like, right? Huge amounts. And our cars are gathering data just about every second, right? So the more technical side comes in as a fascinating pattern recognition process, right? And we've set up everything to be prepared for deep machine learning. But at the same time, on the human side, my view is today to interact with the internet or whatnot, largely people have to think more like computers in that and like the workflow, right? And when you think about the messy creative processes that humans go through, I don't know if anyone else is using like ChatGPT or Bard or anything regularly, but you just have to go through the search history of what you've been asking these chat clients to see, and that's where the services become more human. And it's kind of that step where AI is shifted to, instead of humans shifting towards digital processes, it's digital processes shifting towards human, which is great, and I think will open up engagement in a way that we haven't seen before. Sorry, I don't know. That was a waffly and non-direct answer.
No, it's good. It's good. No, I like it. If you trying to get to kind of real practical advice now for organizations that aren't technology first, haven't been thinking about the data in the way that you've described, you've been thinking about preparing yourself for at-scale automation and AI generally. So if you put yourself in the position of a CEO of a less technical organization, not a software company, so kind of dealing with the messiness of legacy and that kind of stuff, what advice would you give to a CEO? Like maybe 3 bits of advice to how to start thinking about AI, both in terms of the opportunity and in terms of practical adoption within a more traditional organization.
I think the good news in this space for anyone looking at it is most of the early products are made for consumer and consumer businesses, in the sense that like the businesses can be treated a bit like a consumer. So the investment's actually pretty cheap. You're looking at like month-to-month subscriptions that are usually sub $100 a seat, that sort of thing.
Right.
Advice: just try it, whatever it is. Just actually like do something. Spend a little bit of time learning how to use it. Let your staff spend a little bit of time and money on it. Like start integrating those, whether it's a note taker in your meetings or any of the automation, the AI based automation that comes through with the big kind of chunky tools, be it like Google or Salesforce or any of that. You don't actually have to do the like deep technical work to be like, oh, is this gonna actually function? Like there's big, well-funded, usually American companies who have done that. And if they're selling it to you in Australia or New Zealand, it's probably got pretty good traction in the US already, and it probably provides value. So I think it's kind of on people to start trying things, and it's not all going to work for you. It might work for someone else, and that's okay. It's like, if you buy a Mini and you're actually a tradie, that's probably not the right car for you, but it still is a good car.
Right. That's true. And I think that's the part that we really encourage people to do is to learn through doing rather than just trying to learn through reading or talking about it, right? It's just to start getting involved in the tools and actually getting hands-on with the iterations, with the understanding of how AI is coming towards human processes and not the other way around, to kind of just demystify it for themselves so they can actually start leaning into it. Because as you said, the future, this is going to be table stakes, the watermark, whatever, however you want to describe it. It's going to be an unavoidable part of doing business and competing. So the sooner people can get into it, the better.
I mean, it'd be like someone trying to say, oh, I'm just not going to use cell phones. It's like, okay, to be honest, that probably sounds pretty nice. But as a business practitioner, it's like, well, let's see how that goes for you.
Yeah, I think we all know a few people that are like, oh, I just don't do technology, or I don't have a smartphone. And their reasons may be very pure, which is fantastic. But when you try and consider how they're going to operate in the modern business world, it becomes pretty tough. And I think that will be how AI is viewed. And whether it's in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, it's just going to be such a fundamental part of doing business that people are going to look a bit silly if they haven't actually started getting involved.
Honestly, I think it's the reality of it is, whether it's accessing information through the internet, whether it's being part of a telegraph network, whether it's, getting access to hundreds of cars in multiple cities that you only pay for when you use. This is all really kind of new capitalism. It's just better through networks, better through shared resources, shared information, shared processing. Most of who's winning out of AI right now is NVIDIA, right? And that's largely because we're going through this major shift in hardware and server farms that's happening behind the scenes for everyone. And that's where the gold is being found right now. But we're all benefiting from it in ways that we just don't even know about right now. So I think, you can hunker down and say things just aren't going to change, but I don't think that's ever really worked out too well for anyone.
That's a great conclusion. Thank you, Eric. I like that. I mean, it's really motivating, or should be motivating for people just to start getting stuck in, because the future is here and now for those who want to lean into it, and that's the recommendation. So thanks, Eric. Really appreciate your insights. Really appreciate what you're doing with Mevo and the impact that you're having, and look forward to keeping in touch.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me on, Asa. And you're gracious enough not to plug what y'all are doing, but just a big thank you from us. We've been using Archie for a couple of months now, and the tool's great. I know it's massively changed our bookkeeping function. So let me plug that for you.
Awesome.
As a closing note.
Okay. Much appreciated.
Wonderful to see you, mate.
This is great. Thanks, everyone. We look forward to the next episode.
Thanks, team.
Thanks.